The moment Bill Maher stepped off his private jet and into Trump Tower's opulent private dining suite, he instinctively knew this wouldn't be just another celebrity gathering, but nothing in his career could have fully prepared him for the electric fusion of bravado, spectacle, and raw personality that awaited, where he found Donald Trump, flanked by a pair of Secret Service agents looking uncomfortably out of place in such casual surroundings, greeting him with that signature, overpowering handshake and a booming voice that carried through the gleaming room. Trump's flank was guarded not by advisors, but by Kid Rock. Oh yes, Kid Rock, who lounged at the table in full leather vest, his ringed fingers tapping the mahogany like a skilled drummer sizing up the beat, eyes darting between Trump's animated expression and Maher's ever-watchful gaze, as if daring him to break the tension with a joke or a question, all while the staff discreetly set out a display of extravagant dishes, filet mignon, lobster risotto, caviar, and bottles of vintage Dom Perignon, each element symbolizing a kind of wealth that only Hollywood or oligarch levels can generate. And as Maher took in the scene, he realized the dinner wasn't just private, it was performative, political theater disguised as a celebrity powwow, and that realization only sharpened the blade of his curiosity. Trump, after a few minutes of small talk, compliments that sounded more like boasts, leaned into Maher with conspiratorial energy, saying he'd arranged the meeting to clear the air, after Maher's jokes about his tweets going after the media, adding with a Cheshire smile, "I like you, Bill, you bite." Maher countered with his trademark sarcasm, saying, "Well, I prefer to bark, but tonight, I'll just howl," and the room flickered with electrified laughter, even from the stoic Secret Service agents, before Kid Rock intervened with a heavy thrum of humor, slurring out a, "Can we get Trump to autograph my guitar while he signs a pardon for me?" which had everyone chuckling again. And then the dinner hit its first bump when Trump, mid-sip of 15-year scotch, pivoted to politics, asking Maher bluntly if he still considered himself a liberal gent, pausing like he expected the answer to be a trap. Maher, always quick, said, "I'm a gent who drinks scotch, political labels are optional with tonight's menu," but before the joke fully landed, Kid Rock locked eyes with Maher and said, voice low and playful, "Bet you don't even know my favorite line from Miley's remix," and Maher shot back, "Because I'd rather talk policy than pop culture, Rob," which earned him a quick jab across the arm that felt more friendly than violent. As plated food arrived, the mood shifted from cordial dissection to competitive camaraderie. Trump, never one to shy away from dominance, began controlling the pace of the conversation, digging into Maher about cancel culture and free speech, then teasing Trump impersonators. Soon, Maher found himself in defense mode, launching into a riff about hypocrisy, calling out both conservatives and liberals for selective outrage, which earned nods from Trump and physical reactions from Kid Rock. A sudden chair swoon, laughed off moments later, but noticed by Maher, who said, "Don't worry, pal, I'll catch you if you fall," to which Kid Rock smirked, saying, "Only if Trump doesn't sign my pardon by then." Trump laughed, showman to the core, and Maher realized the power dynamics on display. He remained the critical observer, while Trump and Kid Rock turned provocation into performance, drawing him into their world even as he claimed to remain outside it. Midway through the second course, talk turned unexpectedly sincere. Trump, glass of red wine in hand, asked Maher about his late mother, a poignant personal angle Maher hadn't anticipated. The host relaxed, sharing memories of her wit and independence, which prompted Trump to grow quiet for a moment, an uncharacteristic flash of empathy. But then Kid Rock, sensing the shift, cracked a joke about being raised by wolves in Detroit, reminding everyone that even personal moments in that room were part of an ongoing performance. Maher laughed, but he also noticed the way Trump and Kid Rock locked eyes then, a kind of unspoken bond formed over jokes and deflection, and he understood that this dinner was not about policy or power so much as about image, how each man wanted to be seen when the cameras weren't capturing them. Before dessert, Trump asked Maher to weigh in on the upcoming midterms, political betting, media manipulation, all sorts of topics were thrown into the mix. Maher answered with his signature blend of cynicism and hopeful pragmatism, lamenting that both parties had become too performance-driven and that voters were the ones losing out. Trump grinned, as if enjoying the tension he'd created, and Kid Rock nodded approvingly. "You've got spine, Maher," he said. At that point, the dessert arrived. Flambéed peaches with bourbon glaze, a culinary spectacle matched only by the evening's conversational extravaganza. And Trump called for a toast to seeing things as they are, not as they're sold, words that turned the confrontation into connection, at least temporarily. Maher raised his glass because he truly agreed, but he also knew they were mid-sentence in a tightrope balancing truth-telling with complicity. After that came the reveal. Trump stood, voice low but forceful, and said to Kid Rock, "You got that pardon ready?" Kid Rock froze, then laughed, and Trump said, "Oh, it's real. Rudy's got the papers." Kid Rock sat stiff as Maher's jaw dropped slightly, and Maher, ever the conspiracy detective, nodded and asked, "Wait, pardon for what?" And Trump leaned forward, voice conspiratorial, "For singing the song nobody's allowed to talk about anymore. A song about America, patriotism, want Kid Rock to end up like these Charlottesville comedians." That was the moment where the veneer cracked. Kid Rock realized the pardon was serious, an actual signed waiver included in the presidential folder Trump had brought, and for once the humor faded. Trump said, "Free speech is free, if I say so." Maher, bristling both ideologically and journalistically, felt a choice: expose it or let it ride. He swallowed. Kid Rock, voice shaking, said, "That means I can't sing whatever I want, without risk." Trump nodded. Maher felt the room shift again. The performance had turned into policy, the celebrity dinner into a political pledge. He decided then to shift tone, saying, "But does it matter if we use speech as currency?" That question pinned Trump, who looked thoughtful for a second. His expression flickered, then he laughed it off, returning to bravado, but the seed had been planted. Kid Rock scanned them both. In that moment, the power dynamic had cracked. Maher sensed an opening for a broader conversation. As the dinner wrapped, Trump suggested they end with cigars. Maher declined, "I can't breathe that smoke." Trump smirked, "You're getting old." Kid Rock laughed. In their laughter, Maher felt the boundary he'd been tracking dissolve again. He noticed the pardon papers, still on the table, glittering faintly under the overhead crystal chandelier. He realized that everything said tonight would leak, so he dropped a line: "Just remember, pardons don't erase accountability." Trump met his gaze but said nothing, and the room held its breath. Kid Rock placed his cigar on the tray, silent. Maher had reminded them that power isn't absolute. Later, back in the suite's private elevator, Trump clapped Maher on the shoulder. "Good talk," he said. Kid Rock nodded. "Next round's on me, no pardon needed." Maher just smiled. As the doors opened on the ground floor, he turned and walking out, understood that history would want to know what happened tonight. Not the jokes, the food, or the pardon rumor, but what he knew too, that power dinners are never about power, it's about memory. Who remembers what? Who silences who? And in the end, the real exchange was not financial, not political, but atmospheric. Who controls the room when no one's watching? After stepping away from that electric evening in Trump Tower, Maher flew back to his studio suite with his mind still spinning from the tangled mix of bravado, candor, and political symbolism he had just witnessed. And it wasn't overnight processing that followed. It was days of quiet reflection punctuated by hurried phone calls with trusted producers, legal advisors, and a few hardened political insiders who each offered a version of caution cloaked in curiosity, warning that once the pardon revelation hit the public airwaves, all of it, the humor, the high-end scotch, the laughter, would vanish beneath a wave of outrage and legal scrutiny. The reporters would descend, media ethicists would dissect every moment, and questions of abuse of executive clemency would swirl even around a dinner that had been meant to remain tightly sealed. Yet if nothing else, Bill Maher told himself that the story needed telling because it might reveal something deeper. How power operates in rooms without press, how celebrity, politics, and policy become entangled in real time, and whether private assurances can ever withstand public accountability. So he called Kid Rock's agent and left a careful message: "I'm ready when you are, but I need to know it's off the record," all the while preparing to simulate the tension, the mood, the texture of that room, in sound and detail, without letting it tip into hearsay or half-truth, because he knew that a show about revealing truth demanded much more than flashy headlines. It required context, nuance, and a sense of responsibility one rarely saw at the intersection of celebrity and politics. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, Kid Rock was pacing his basement studio, cigarette smoke swirling around amps and cables. As calls from attorneys and label execs buzzed through his phone, everyone wanted to know if that pardon was real, if it came with strings, and what that meant for pending lawsuits over controversial lyrics he dropped years before. Rock's own people insisted he stick to the narrative they'd reviewed with Maher. Yes, it happened, yes, Trump brought documents stamped with full pardon consideration, and yes, he laughed about it in a joking way, but this was entertainment, not governance, and the public was smarter than that. Yet as he rewatched Maher's silent smoke break on set, reflected on the exchange over dessert, he wondered if he'd accidentally become something more than a country rapper turned political symbol, maybe a steward of a raw, unfiltered testament to the fragility of power, and part of him feared that Maher might tell the full version anyway, pardon or not, and if he did, that could change his life, and his music, forever, not because he'd lied, but because when private moments become public currency, the context can melt faster than the truth. In the days before the big reveal, sources started leaking to the press. A Trump aide, annoyed at Maher's prominence, hinted that the story had nuked the room, and journalists sharpened their quills, calling it the Sunday dinner heard round the world. Others, more cynical, speculated that Maher had masterminded the entire scenario as a ratings coup, planting rumors of pardons to manipulate public interest, and suddenly the story wasn't just about politics, it was about media manipulation itself. Bill noticed the shift. He could feel anticipation rippling through tweet storms, T-Day podcast previews, even insurance execs wondering if a political dinner gone rogue could jeopardize liability policies for celebrity appearances, and that's when he realized the decision wasn't about what he'd seen, but what he would let the public see, a matter of tone, timing, truth. So Maher drafted the segment like a legal script. No raw pardons, just the emotional beats. The hush when Trump showed the folder, the flash in Kid Rock's eyes, the weight in his voice when he said, "That means I can say whatever," and most of all, the way everyone paused when Maher dropped the line. Accountability doesn't follow paper, it follows context. It became a mantra for the show, a way to advertise both dramatic revelation and thoughtful interpretation, teasing viewers with the line, "What Trump and Kid Rock thought didn't count," until Maher's question forced the moment to truth, but framed so that nobody suspected it was a reveal about power, not punchlines. On the night of the show, the cameras rolled, the studio lights revealed Maher at his desk, the audience buzzed with expectancy, and right when he launched into the monologue, "A private dinner can become a public reckoning," the mood shifted, the audience leaned in. Maher walked them through the dinner course by course, voice measured, stopping only to quote Trump's scotch-laced line, "Free speech is free, if I say so," then building to the crescendo, "But no man's word stands alone in empty rooms," he said, holding the moment in silence before revealing that actual papers had been present on the table, papers stamped with full pardon consideration, something he had verified through trusted sources. Not rumors, but documents he'd handled himself, pages that led the Secret Service to lean in, Kid Rock to freeze, and Trump to flex authority in private that he didn't flex in public. He repeated the moment again, underlining that power's currency isn't gold or title, it's control of narrative in private space. But even as he described the reveal, he avoided speculation. He didn't say Trump promised a pardon, only that it was considered, that it remained on the table, and that it mattered because it cut through the veneer. The audience on set shifted posture, some leaned forward, others stared at their laps, and as the camera panned back to Maher's face, he locked it. This is how power is offered, not declared. The statement landed like a gavel. Then he pivoted to consequences. Pardons aren't just legal, they're symbolic. He said, that folder might not be filed, but the memory is filed. No theatrics, no hammer, just truth and pause. And in that urgency-forged pause, the room understood, the story was real, but the lesson was universal. That night's show didn't just trend, it sparked a national conversation. TV networks picked up the soundbite, social feeds lit up, news clips replayed, "Free speech is free, if I say so," alongside Maher's careful follow-up, "But what if it costs everything to say it?" Think Pieces asked, did Trump treat Kid Rock like a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice? Conservative podcasts asked, has Maher become Trump's whistleblower? Left-leaning outlets asked, is this the most dangerous dinner moment since Nixon met Elvis? And amid it all, Maher stayed silent about who leaked what. He refused to confirm sources, but he reinforced his rhetorical line. A story like this transcends politics, it's a story about how America remembers and what we owe truth when no one's watching. Kid Rock didn't appear on camera immediately after, but in a surprise weekend radio interview, he confirmed the folder's existence without naming names, saying, "It was there. I mean, I laughed, but yeah, it was real." The clip went viral. Late-night hosts memed the folder like it was Voldemort's Horcrux, tweeted, "Kid Rock pocket, pardon pending," and Maher got the last laugh, but not alone. The next morning, he opened Newsweek with the full transcript, subtly edited to keep confidentiality but underline his framing. "Tonight, we saw power in private, and asked what it demands of us in public." The fallout endured. Members of Congress floated bills about closing, pardon loopholes, media watchdogs held panels on cameras versus cloakrooms, and law professors debated executive clemency, using Trump's table talk as a case study in private authority. Maher was invited to speak at universities about dinner diplomacy. Kid Rock dropped a surprise track called "Folder on the Table." Trump tweeted both praise and ambiguity, praising Maher's insight while denying any official pardon discussions. And across the board, the public was left wondering, what other conversations happen off camera that shape the nation's future, unchecked and unfettered? Bill Maher, meanwhile, wrapped the segment not with gloating, but with reflection. "We're not telling you what to think," he told the audience. "We're telling you to remember, it's what's unsaid that often moves the pieces." The screen faded to black. No applause. Just the sound of a nation asking itself, who's watching when there's no camera?